I am a resident of Pine Island. I've lived here since 2013. I have 2 children that have attended Pine Island schools through elementary, middle, and into high school. I have 2 boys that actually attended Montessori in Rochester, and one's off in Japan, far away from home, studying international business at a Japanese university, and he taught himself Japanese. He was going to go to lacrosse, and then a few months before decided that he'd take that journey. So he's off in Japan right now. The reason I'm running for school board is I've been a part of this community. You probably know that I am an entrepreneur with my wife. We own the Old Pine Theater. We own Willows Keep Farm on Highway 52. And at Willows Keep Farm, we also run Rochester Horror, which is southern Minnesota's largest haunted attraction. So we're gearing up for that. I'm not sleeping many nights, but we have to get ready and we have to be open for October 7th. And then we also have Hemp Maze, Minnesota, and we have a store out at the farm that's open 7 days a week selling our cannabis-derived products. So why am I running for school board? Again, I have a connection to this community through the businesses, but also with my children attending school and also doing community education and community theater. I've taught introduction to acting and introduction to improv, teaching to elementary and middle-aged schools through community education. And then we've also done community theater up here on stage with Pop-Up Pine Area People for the Arts. And I've worked with those students that are in those productions as the director, and I've also acted in those productions as well. And then I also have worked with the musical theater program. We do, through Papa, we do youth musical theater every summer. This last summer we did Matilda. We've done Lion King, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and what was the other one? There was one other one that's I can't think of right now. Aladdin, there you go. And my daughters were there, so that's really important to me. I obviously like theater. That's why we bought this thing here, and we continue to do theater in the community. I see a lot of things that the schools are doing wonderfully. We have great facilities, as you all know. You know, we've got a lot of things that I think are going well as far as the athletics, as far as the music program, as far as the theater program, as far as academics, but I do think we can improve upon. I think you would all agree that there's always room for improvement. There's room for improvement on yourself. There's room for improvement with your children. There's always room for improvement. And so what it's really about is seeing where we're at and trying to help improve upon what we have here. I do have a master's in education, and before I took early retirement and decided to be an entrepreneur, I worked at the University of Minnesota. So I was the advisor for the occupational therapy program and the medical lab science program. So, and I have a long career of working in higher ed, so I have that experience. I also worked at the secondary level in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for 10 years, and I worked at the Maramed Foundation. It was an experiential maritime program where we took at-risk youth. We went out on the Tule Moor, which was a 3-masted big ship, and we went around the islands, and I taught math and I taught physical education, so it was a lot of fun. But that's the other experience I have working with youth, as well as I was a strength coach at Stewartville High School, working with their athletic program there as well. So again, I have those experiences. I think I have a good skill set to help further education here in Pine Island, and I'm really doing this for the children, for the students, but also as well as the community, the parents, and the teachers. So thank you again for coming tonight. I'm going to pass my mic to Dawn.
I'm Dawn Shea. I'm kind of new to your community. We've been here a little over a year. Speak up. Okay. Yeah, that's not surprising. I'm told that all the time. My name is Dawn. I'm new to your community. I've been here a little bit over a year. My kids were here last year and they're in school now again. I have 4 children. we spent some time in Colorado, in the Denver area, and have a little bit more experience with what I'll say not great schools. So I have been very, very appreciative to, for what we've come back to. It was one of the reasons why we moved back to Minnesota, was to be by better schools. So loving all of the extra things that you guys have to offer for especially high school students, as two of mine are now in high school, and all those classes that I never even would have thought to include, but I love that they're there. The innovative arts and the agricultural classes and things like that is really cool to have to offer. I am, as I said, a mother of 4, and while I don't have a educational background the way that Ted does, I really care about children, and particularly their being successful in life, and encouraging them to be so. I really have a heart for seeing improvements, especially in those who are struggling, particularly those with special needs, such as, I have a brother with dyslexia, and so walking through that journey with him, and I have a couple of kiddos with ADD, so things like that, where there's some struggle, but to be able to get them to a point where they're succeeding and thriving is a passion of mine. A little bit more about me: I am from a very large family. I am one of 15 children, and I, for some reason, always ended up around big families. I don't know, maybe it's some kind of magnetism. My best friend has 7 children, and another friend has 6 children, and another friend has 8, and so it's just been kind of I've lived my life around children forever. So, and all through that, I've had the opportunity to teach early elementary, as far as like in a co-op setting for those who couldn't afford preschool. We offered that as kind of a co-op scenario, so they would come and learn their letters and some of their sight words and things like that, just to kind of give them a little bit of a boost. And then I did a lot of childcare as well. So I have done in-home daycare, and in that scenario also provided the same services. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me, and I'll let you talk to Kevin.
Hello, my name is Kevin Ronkin. I moved to Pine Island in 2017. I grew up in small towns. I love small towns, and it's a perfect place to live. I love it here. I don't have as much to say as they do. I just kind of get to the point, as I'm running for school board. I want to see the kids get the best education possible. I have a degree in biomedical technology, biomedical engineering, and especially seeing with science and the technology that's coming these days, I want to see the kids have the best chance to get the education and succeed so they can get into those jobs, because there are going to be more and more of those jobs coming. I don't have any kids, but I got 2 nieces and a nephew that I help out however I can, and I've tutored my nieces before. And I've been looking for a way to help give back to the community that I enjoy, and I just want to see how I make things better for the kids.
Okay, so now that you've gotten to at least hear why we're running for school board and what our experiences are, one of the reasons, I'm just going to put it out here, that we ran as a team. You've probably seen this year at other schools. There's school boards running as teams, or they're running as slates. We chose to have a team. We believe that together everyone achieves more. You've probably heard that. And there's actually us 3 that probably maybe wouldn't have run for school board without the support of one another. So it kind of brings more to the field of candidates for you to choose from. We are not, we're all individuals. We're all on the ballot individually. We, might have some things we agree upon, and then we might have some things we don't agree upon. Now that's important too. We've been working through the summer, having meetings. Some of us decided to put ourselves in this position later than others. Others were, more, hey, I'm going to run for school board. So again, like I said, we're all individuals. So we're going to go through our list of questions to you so that we can understand a little bit more about what you're trying to see with your school boards and your schools here in Pine Island. Like I said, we've got a slide presentation behind us. We're going to go through that, and then at the end we will break out and you guys can ask questions of us. So Matt, can you go ahead and go to slide 1, please? Okay, so what do you believe the role of school board is? Could I see some hands or somebody that's interested in giving us an idea of what they believe school board is?
I think it's a connection between the parents, community, teachers, students.
Thank you. And I saw, were you going to say something?
What was the answer?
Oh, what was her answer? It was
Connection.
between the parents, teachers, students, and the school board. Is that what you said, Megan?
Community.
Community. Anybody else? Did you want to move into question 2 then?
Yeah. All right, so what are some strengths and weaknesses that you perceive of Pine Island schools? We would love to know these specifically so that we can figure out how do we fortify and build on the strengths, and how do you see the school board being able to respond to the weaknesses? So if anyone has anything in particular that they'd be willing to kind of shout out there for us.
I got one here.
Yes.
I just moved here 3 years ago, and my daughter has an IEP, and other schools that we went to, we had a lot of backlash and not a whole lot of support on it, and here they've, jumped right on board and helped with her through that.
So they helped her get the IEP
Yeah.
and the help that she needs?
Yeah.
I think a strength is inclusion, especially in sports. I have a son who wrestles, and this is his very first year, and our coaches are phenomenal, build personal relationships, those kind of things. I think one really big weakness is the lack of focus on education, that I feel like Pine Island the school tries to put their arms in all these baskets where they don't belong, and their main focus is not education. So that's something I would love to see improve.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. And then in light of some of the strengths, how do we, as a community, as a school board, how do we build on those strengths? How do we keep them strong?
I think they're doing a good job of hiring good teachers themselves.
Hiring good teachers.
So part of that with hiring strong teachers, how do you better reward your teachers? Because I feel like there's a potential for turnover. I know one of the reasons I left the U was not because I didn't like what I did. I loved what I did. I would bring the students, I'd do a little bit of recruiting. I'd bring the students onto campus. We would get them going into the programs. Then I would advise them all the way through. And I was actually the last one to sing the alma mater and say goodbye. But what was difficult is, are you being rewarded for the work that you're doing? Now I know there's some teachers in here. Do they feel that they're being rewarded for the teaching that they're doing? And do they feel respected for that? Because again, if we hire good teachers but we can't retain good teachers, then we're going to have a struggle in academics. And I know Governor Walz just pumped in, I think, was it 1.2 billion? Is that correct? Does anyone know that? I think some of the teachers would know that. So where's that 1.2 billion going? And I feel like that's important for us too, that we, fight for those teachers, for those educators, and say, hey, there needs to be more money pumped into the system so that we retain those teachers and keep them with us.
In the right part of the system, yeah.
So not being a teacher myself, at least not at the secondary or elementary level, I did do some teaching at the University of Minnesota. I know because I have a family member who taught for 34 years, that she left teaching. She took early retirement because she just couldn't handle anymore the constant beating up of teachers publicly that goes on. And she felt that they are not appreciated, that people don't understand what their role is. They don't understand the structures that they have to work within. People think teachers should be doing this and this and this and this, and in reality, the regulations around teaching require them not to do that. And one of the most creative programs she ever did, which I won't go into, it was phenomenal, was she had to quit because it didn't fit with the stuff they had to teach in 4th grade. So that's one thing. I think there's a demoralization among teachers that we just don't really realize the impact that's having and how many teachers are leaving. Another thing is that, it's no secret that Pine Island is not one of the highest paying districts in the area. And the teachers who stay here for a long time do it because they love it, not because of what they earn. And there's got to be some other things that are motivating them. So maybe asking them, what is it that keeps you here? It's not the money. And how do we reinforce that?
Are there any teachers here that would be willing to speak upon that?
I'll speak.
I think we're in trouble.
Thank you.
Mostly because I was asked on behalf of the teachers of Pine Island and our union to come and speak tonight. And I'll speak to both parts, both as a teacher in the high school and as a negotiator for our last contract. I'll speak to the demoralization of teachers first. And if I could speak directly to the 3 candidates first, I would like to do that because I come and I sit as a Pine Island teacher who was called a bully on Facebook last week. The teachers union in Pine Island is not a faceless, nameless entity. We are community members. We are the theater director. We are the coaches that have been spoken highly of. I think statewide, nationally, there is a conversation to be had about partisan politics and where money goes and endorsements. That's not the Pine Island Teachers Union. And I moderated the school board debate last week that everybody was invited to, walked off the stage and was asked by a community member, well, how does it feel that the teachers union was called a bully? And I said, what are you talking about? And they spun around the phone and showed me on Facebook the statement that was on your website calling the teachers union out for bullying. I had never met any of you personally at that point. I've known some of you in other capacities. Ted, we've met a little bit through our theater connections. And I was really taken aback, and the colleagues that I worked with to put on that event were really taken aback because we have made a point to, as much as possible, stay above the political fray. We have made a point to, as much as possible, not show favoritism towards candidates or to endorse certain candidates. And so I was honestly, and I am now, you can tell that my voice is trembling, I was nervous to be here tonight because I didn't know how I would be received as a Pine Island teacher walking in the door. That frightens me from people I know could be sitting on the school board. That frightens me from people I would hope to partner with in the future if one or all of you did receive a seat on the school board, how that relationship would be mended and how that partnership would work when the rhetoric already feels toxic. And if it feels toxic from both sides, I think it would be the union's position to remedy that as well. I think we were almost caught a little bit off guard of when and how that happened, because there hadn't been a lot of, we felt, personal interaction between the members of the exec board and the members of the candidates. So the demoralization piece, not to put it all on you, I think is very real. And I think coming out of COVID, it has felt like it's coming from all sides. I think post-COVID and kind of the national conversation about education, it feels like it's coming from all directions. And I think staff in particular, who has stuck it out, is very sensitive to kind of what the rhetoric is around what's happening in their classrooms. The flip side of that was the compensation. Nobody goes into teaching for the money. We know what that is going into it. That being said, you know, most of the teachers I know and work with would love to live in this community, and we know what taxes and housing prices and the cost of living in this community is. You know, when you talk about raising property taxes and going to referendum for the schools, you're going to your teachers in that tax base a lot of the time. So, you know, if fair wage that would help teachers live in the community and be part of the community that they teach in, I think is more than a fair goal. My husband and I were able to build a house here 2 years ago. It's the community that we would like to, you know, raise our family in. I was really proud of the contract that the teachers put together in the last negotiation cycle. I think it raised us up to be, if not equal, at least closer to a lot of the competition, if you will, in southeastern Minnesota. But it's a great place to live and it's a great place to work. And I think other districts are realizing that and having to come up with competitive contracts. And I would like to see Penn be able to continue to compete as we go to future negotiation cycles. So that may have been more miracle than you were looking for, but that's
No, we really appreciate you speaking and feel comfortable here. I mean, I'm sorry if you felt like it was an attack upon yourself or the union or the teachers. I'm not sure, I don't believe that was my post. Was it a post from a community member on there?
It was included in your post.
all three names were assigned to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do appreciate that. I think that gives us a little bit more of an idea of where the teachers are coming from. And that's what we kind of wanted to hear. So moving on to number... Oh yes, go ahead.
The whole issue of how COVID affected schools, you know, so when COVID started, everybody was flying blind. Nobody knew what we were dealing with. That's true with politicians that had to make decisions, governors, everybody. Nobody knew what we were dealing with. And so the solution right up front was we just have to shut things down until we get this under control. And as they moved things back in, it worked pretty well at first, you know, but then people started getting growly about it. And the teachers had to make such incredible adaptations to how they taught, sometimes teaching in a different way that they've never been trained in or never understood, didn't have the interaction with their students, which, from what I know of most teachers, the interaction with the students is the #1 thing, you know, and that it's different on Zoom than it is in person. And it just really, frankly, fried my hide to see people beating up on teachers over this whole stuff. They did a fabulous job. Now, was this hard on kids? Absolutely. There is no question that it has affected our kids for generations, but it is not because the teachers didn't do what they needed to do. It's because COVID was a mess. And, you know, I just can't thank you enough for how the contribution you made to the kids in this community with what you did.
And the fact is that we hold that same opinion. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Would you turn it off? I'm like, I'm pretty sure
No, it's
can't get any closer. I'll try and speak louder. We feel the same way. we're so incredibly grateful. I can't tell you the number of times, my kids went through COVID, and we had, a second grader who was still learning how to read. And the things that were offered to him, that were offered to us as parents that made, teaching at home, which is what we were doing, so much easier. But it's because of the legwork of these teachers and administrators to make those things happen and to put them into place. So we're not, anti-teacher, and we're not anti-union. But what is a little it's discouraging to hear that you were afraid to come here tonight. Because if you had been on our website, I think it's all still up there. Is all the information still up there?
On
On our website.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that we are a proponent of is partnering with teachers and administration and community members to come together collectively and offer our best as a community to students, yes, but to parents, to grandparents, because let's face it, a lot of grandparents are highly involved now in daycare for their grandchildren, and as well as even offering the additional resources for teachers, and just have done some brainstorming on what could that look like. And so that would actually bring us to our third part of this question, is what could the role of community be, participation be, in both building on strengths and addressing weaknesses?
I want to say one thing quick. When it comes to the bullying, I can't stand bullies. I hate bullies. But as you see, there's 3 of us. There was 4. The 4th dropped out because people that were talking to him bullied him, and he was afraid for his family's, health and welfare. That's why he's not here with us tonight. For his family's sake, he dropped because he was getting bullied by, I don't know if it was a union or members of the community, but he was getting bullied, and that's why he's no longer with us. We wish he was. He was an amazing person.
Do you know that as a fact?
Yes.
Yes, we've seen it.
As I was told, people went right to his home, and he told them that was not the reason he left.
That's what he told us.
Yes, see them make them look like.
For transparency, I'm just going to read this too when you're going.
Okay. So, a couple things. So, this is a nonpartisan position that we're running for. We all know that, right? Everybody here knows that? Couple things. So, we had planned our meet and greets prior to the PIEA, Pine Island Education Association, creating the forum last Wednesday. I was not able to attend. I think people probably know why. I went to the Guthrie. I had a very good friend that is a professional actor. He was here a few years ago and I couldn't see him on stage, so I went up to the Guthrie to see that. Some people ask, well, why didn't you go another night? Well, he gave me comp tickets, and when they give you comp tickets, you don't refuse comp tickets, so that's why. So I'm very glad that I did that. But there's another reason why I didn't go to the forum. This is a nonpartisan position we're running for. The last time the PIEA did that was 10 years ago. Maybe that's because there was a bigger pool back then, I don't know. But they don't do it every cycle. So that's the first question I want to ask the PIEA. Now, I know there's some of you that are in here that are union members. Maybe you can answer that. Why this time, not the other time? The other thing too, I haven't been given those questions. I'd love to answer those questions. I could write them up, put them on our website, put them on the Facebook page, wherever. I think that's another thing that we as candidates should have those questions. I believe it was going to be put up on YouTube. Has it been put up on YouTube yet? Okay. But I'd like to see that too, because I think that's important.
Downloaded accidentally on our personal YouTube page, so that you have to, it should be hopefully tomorrow.
Okay. But I also feel like, even though you can say, well, that was a forum, it was somewhat of a debate, because those questions, I'm not sure that the candidates had the chance to look at those questions prior. So the candidates, And it's great if it was moderated great. I mean, I'm glad if it was, that's wonderful. But to me, to ask potentially 9 candidates, 1 dropped out, so 8 candidates questions in a public forum like that, even though they're all the same questions, I'm not sure how you rotated, made sure each candidate answered them, but if there were 8 of us and the first person answered, by the time it gets to that last person, it might be a very different answer to the question. So again, I don't know if that's the best way to do it either. And so I'm speaking upon myself, that's why I wasn't in attendance. I don't know if I was available, if I would have gone. Because I feel like, again, this is a nonpartisan position. The community should pick the best candidates to be on the school board. Yes, they should get to know one of us personally, and if they don't know us from the community, then yeah, I think it's important to have meet and greets. If I've been in this community since 2013, and I've been pushing for this community, I would hope that people can say, oh no, you know what? We know Ted, he's got good character, I think he'd do well in that role. So then I don't even know if I have to go to the forum or if the forum is really going to help me. But I guess that's the other thing where I feel like then last Monday when we had our meet and greet, we had a few community members come in. And then all of a sudden there's 20, 25, we know who you are, union people come in. That's fine, but you come in 5 minutes after, we're here. And it did seem like a little bit like we're being attacked. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I don't understand why that has to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. And maybe I'm just being defensive, but then we had this presentation that we were going to run through, and we didn't even get through like one question.
Are you talking retired teachers then? I'm just curious, because I know
there was a group of people,
current staff members were here last week.
Okay, and maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it wasn't 25, maybe it was 18 or 20, but we had just a few community members, and then all of a sudden at about 7:35, a group of people came in.
And you're assuming they're current union members, or you're sure?
No.
I didn't ask for a union card, so I don't know if they were union, but I know a lot of teachers in Pine Island.
There were several retired. I did
Because
talk to them
retired
afterwards.
teachers wouldn't be current members of
Right.
teachers. So
Right,
current
but
staff-
they might also be coming to support the teachers, which is fine. That's fine. That's why I want it to be an open discussion. I want it to be a meet and greet where anyone can come in here and feel welcome. But I just want you to understand on our side, it felt like, okay, now we did respond. I think we responded quite well to the questions asked, and we had it live streamed. And Matt told me there was 180 views or 84 views tonight of that live stream of that. So again, it's important. I mean, we are bringing up some of those issues that the teachers were asking us questions. We answered back and tried to, give them, what we felt would help. But I guess that's all I'm trying to say is on our end, please understand that that's why we felt like it was somewhat of an attack. And then we had one member that decided that they no longer wanted to be in this race. Now, I can't speak for Bino because he's not here, but you probably know that he's from Sri Lanka and he's experienced 20 years of civil war. And I don't know if that brought up PTSD for him. I don't know. I don't know what caused him to say, okay, I need to step down. But Dawn does have what he wrote us. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, and
expand
I'll
on
just
that.
say that, okay, so as Ted mentioned, we did have both of these events planned, and then this other event came up, which conflicted with something for every one of us, unfortunately. And I was of the position, I'm going to just wait and see if I'm going to go, but that would mean breaking a commitment, which I have a hard time doing. However, it ended up on Wednesday. Well, I'll back up a little bit. Prior to last Monday, there was so much just negative everything coming at us, specifically through Facebook, when none of what was being brought up had been brought up by us. Just a lot of things where people were posting, trying to hook us into a debate. There were things that were being said about us on other Facebook platforms that were completely not even true. So that was discouraging enough. And then to have a group of people show up, stream through the door 5 minutes after we were supposed to start, and take over our entire goal of being here was to listen to the community and to get feedback, so that as a school board, if we were ever to make it as a school board team, we would know what you're looking for. But that was completely sidelined. We ended up having to not just take questions, but you should have been here to hear the tone of voices.
And
Just please let me finish. Thank you. That was very intimidating. So to think about showing up at an event that was, you know, after listening to retired teachers and community members who came here just to do battle, to think about going to that event 2 days later, there was no way I was going to show up. And then the next night, the very next night, we get an email from our teammate dropping out. Okay? And I'm not going to read all of it for sake of his, privacy. But I will share the part that is in question. Speaking of his kids, he says, "We moved here so that they could enjoy public school, not risk having a target on their back. As a family, we would like to be here long term, and if there is even a slight risk of retaliation on our kids, that is something we cannot put them through." And this has caused me to question, because before he even sent this out to us as a group, I had all the same doubts already. So to lose a teammate who I mostly agree with, sometimes don't have the same perspective of, but who is strong, incredible man, a doctor, multiple degrees in engineering, doctorate engineer, an incredibly smart, talented man. And to lose that option for our school board because of the same concerns I have for my own family, it pretty near wrecked me. And I almost didn't come tonight. And I'm still not sure I'm going to continue running, to be completely honest. I haven't made that decision yet. But this is why.
I wanted to add, well, when that group came in, we were looking forward to meeting everybody. We're, walking around shaking hands and introducing ourselves, and they were all pretty cold to us. And they took over our meeting. It was supposed to be a fun meet and greet, tell us a little bit about ourselves, find out what you guys want from the school board, how the school board can make things better for the students, the teachers, the parents, the community, everybody.
So sorry.
Sorry, Mick, you interrupted me. But, and they took over the whole thing, and we really didn't get a chance. If we tried to answer something, we'd get interrupted. And it was a nonstop barrage, and then all of a sudden they all just stood up at once, just walked out the door, and I thought that was as rude as could be. I'm like, I grew up in small towns. That is not, that's not Minnesota nice. We're here putting ourselves, I hate being in front of people. I don't like being in front of crowds. But I'm out here putting myself out here because I want to help everybody. And for them to come in here and not even knowing us, the lies have been said about us on Facebook and stuff, it was an attack. And like I said, then all of a sudden they just got up, walked out, and I thought that was as rude as can be, and this town's better than that.
There were a few who stayed. There were a couple of retired teachers that I had the privilege of talking with. And the ideas that they had was exactly what we were looking for, what I was looking for. And if I do continue on with this, I did get her contact information because that's what we want. We want to take someone who has had 36 years of experience as a teacher and has already done some of that legwork to be able to give that back to our current teachers, offer them all of their ideas, so that there is a database and a wealth of information at your fingertips. I just feel like that is so important. So I'm thankful for the couple who did stick around.
Yes.
I got a question. You say you don't decide if you're gonna run or not, people are already voting. You can't take your name off the ballot. You can't take your name off the ballot. So I guess you should have decided that before you run. I have a question. Why did you run as a four instead of running as all four individuals, like everybody else did?
I think I answered that. It was to, for one, I don't know that we would have gotten more candidates on the ballot because, as you can hear, some of these people maybe aren't used to public speaking, not used to putting themselves in front of people. But they have great ideas. And then on the other hand, we also can pull our resources, right? So we have a website, we have a Facebook, we have signs, we have, literature. We also can support one another when we don't, maybe we're struggling, maybe we need help. That's what this is all about, working together as a team. Plus, if you're on the school board, I hope you are working as a team. I do hope you're working as a team.
To answer your question, if I could, about the forum and why it was held for the first time after 10 years, I think multiple factors, all of which you kind of touched on tonight. One, there have been, when we look back over the course of the last 2 decades, there have been a handful of occasions in which there's maybe 4 people running for 3 seats or 5 people running for 4 seats. We couldn't find a situation in which there were 9 people running at the time for 4 seats. So it did present an interesting situation of, well, how do you even gather information on that many candidates? And you guys were holding your meetings, and if the other 5 chose to do 5 individual meetings, that's a lot of just time to try and sift through who's what. And the other thing that's unique about the situation that you've spoken to is it's the first time that we've had anybody running in a block of candidates, and a lot of what was out there on Facebook and on the website was you as 4 in a group, and now you as 3 in a group, and kind of questions were coming up, and we were trying to, figure out, well, Dawn has answered this question, and Ted has answered this question, and you're kind of trying to piece questions together. And so I think the idea was if we could get all 9, or that it was all 8 candidates together at once, you would have the opportunity to go through, like you said, and kind of ask individually. And some of the answers may touch on each other, that's true, and we had randomized the order that each question was answered in so that you didn't have the same person always starting and the same person kind of always ending up as the butt of the answers. But I think this situation, being that we had a group of candidates running together, being that we had so many candidates running at once, presented a unique situation, and the leadership board of the union turns over every year. So every year that there's an election, you have a different group of executive officers going, what, if any, role does PIA want to have in trying to facilitate a conversation or a forum between the community and the candidates? And I think in situations past, school board elections have not really been all that exciting. School board meetings that I've been to have not always been that exciting for the majority of my career, and in the last 3 years that's kind of changed, and certainly in this election cycle we've seen it change. And there was a lot more community interest in getting to know candidates as well. And so that was the motivating factor in hosting it. The timing between the meet and greets, as you know, in scheduling your own events is such that just trying to find a date that, do we do it before you were having your meet and greets? That didn't give us a lot of time to put it together. If we did it after you had your meet and greets, would you feel motivated to go because you had an opportunity to meet? We kind of thought we'd split the difference and maybe give everybody an equal chance to kind of come in all together. I understand your reasons for not attending. I heard the show was wonderful, actually, from the early reviews I saw of the Guthrie performance. So I understand your reasons for not coming. The thing that concerned me in listening to your answer a little bit was you kind of insinuating that maybe you felt like it was a setup, or maybe you felt like it was, designed to be a gotcha. We didn't give any of the candidates the questions in advance, not because we wanted it to be a gotcha, but because we really wanted to know what level of knowledge candidates were coming in with. If I ask you what is your next step in implementing our strategic plan, I'm curious whether you as candidates have read the strategic plan, or whether you go, I didn't even know the district had a strategic plan, I should go look that up and I should respond. And yeah, that's a question that if you answer first and you don't know the strategic plan, you're probably stuck. And if you're the candidate who answers it last, you probably had the benefit of hearing some other people talk to it. And there's never going to be a way to fix that. But that was the reasoning, and when it was, how it was designed and scheduled, and how it was moderated moving forward.
I'd like to say, it would have been nice if they had collaborate with us to try and schedule something, because we all had previous engagements. I work in Minneapolis. I don't get home from work till 7 o'clock at night. It would have been nice if they would have contacted us and say, what times work for you. That's what we've had to do for all our meetings, is talk to each other and say, okay, what nights work for us? What nights can we all make work? We weren't given that option. We were sent an email, so this is when it is. We all had things already planned and already scheduled. It would have been nice if they would have talked to us and let us be a part of setting up the time and place. That would have made it a lot better, a lot easier, instead of seeing all the stuff on Facebook about how they're not going to be there, they don't care. We care, but it would have been nice to have a forefront of being able to help you set up the time and place, so we could have been there.
And it was a little sad because Vino was going to be there, but he backed out the night before, so.
Should we move on?
Yep, I think so.
Matt, can you go to the next slide, please? No, we brought these up partly because we got a question that's going to lead into this, but these are the test scores from the Department of Education, Minnesota Department of Education for Pine Island, and you can see we've slid quite a bit. Now, other schools have too. I know we've talked about COVID. Obviously, that's affected our students. It's affected all of us. I think some of it's been traumatic for kids, and some of it's probably been traumatic for teachers, because all of a sudden you're not able to teach like you did before. And you've got, theater. How do you teach theater? I mean, I know we need to be creative, and we were creative, but that can be very difficult, right? We also have children that rely on their teachers to learn how to communicate, how to read, how to speak. And all of a sudden you have a mask on, you have plastic in front of you, or you're going through Zoom, or you're going through online. So we know there's a lot of reasons why these scores have gone down. Matt, will you go ahead and go to the next slide so we can ask the questions? So we would like to hear if there are any teachers present. Can you speak first to the validity of those results? How accurate do you believe these are in responding to Pine Island's student proficiency? So we know it's a test. I mean, is it measuring? I'm not the one administering the test. I know the teachers are administering the test. But the state, again, is asking the questions. So what is the validity of that? Is that a good measure?
Is this just going to be me?
Yeah, come on.
It's going to be me. You're the school person. I guess I'm the school board. Oh, you got to chew on it?
I have to chew on it.
Okay. I'll say this first. When we look at test scores over time, something that gets missed in the data that I think is super important to make note of is you're measuring different groups of kids taking the test. So those scores, I believe, are the middle school aggregate score. Because you could measure the high school, but like the high school reading, they only take it in 10th grade, so that would be one data point. That's going to be, I think, don't quote me on this, that looked like the graph that was the average score from the middle school, elementary middle school.
It's what was in the paper, which is why
Okay,
use as well.
I'm pretty sure that's the middle school average.
Fairly certain.
So the thing you have to remember with a group of scores that way is you always have a group at the top that's going out, and you always have a group at the bottom that's coming in. And that's important to remember because if your group at the top, your 8th graders, say you have a really proficient 8th grade class that has worked their way through a whole curriculum and is really stellar, they go out of your next testing cycle because they go to 9th grade. And if you have a group, say, of kids who were learning how to read during COVID, who are maybe less proficient because they haven't been in the classroom, you're replacing a group that was in the classroom pre-COVID with a class that's coming into the classroom post-COVID. And so from an average test score standpoint, you're probably seeing, and again, I'm making a judgment based on what I perceive could be happening just from what I know happened in schools, you're potentially seeing a bigger shift just average-wise because of the groups you're replacing. So I think it's always super important when you look at average test score data that way, just to remember that you're kind of comparing an apple to an orange because it's not the same group of kids going through every year. So that would just be one thing that I would encourage you or anybody who looks at test data. I was really tempted actually to put that in the comments of the community newspaper article too, because you can find data of the same kind of cohort that goes through where you can look at testing data from the 2017 3rd graders and then the testing data that was of the 2018 4th graders and the 5th graders. So you can kind of look at data that way to see how a similar group of kids is progressing. And obviously that's going to have some kids who are going in and some kids are going out, and our district is growing, which is great, and that brings more kids in, and that's going to unbalance your numbers too. So that's what I would say just from looking at the numbers perspective. From the actual validity of the test perspective, I think the bigger issue that those numbers run up against are the fact that what we lost from COVID was kids' self-motivation to want to do well on a standardized test. There's nothing in it for the kids, and by the time I moderate the 10th grade test, I'm a high school English teacher, by the time I'm watching 10th graders take the test, there is no reason for them to want to do well. There's no academic measure for them as far as their GPA is concerned, their transcript is concerned. At least when they take the ACT, we can sell it to the kids who think they're college bound, that this is going to go on your college application, so there's a little bit of intrinsic motivation there. The MCA test has none of that, and I think for younger kids, you can kind of sell them on it's test day, we're going to have breakfast, it's going to be fun, we want you to do your best. You know, there are some things in the younger grades that you can kind of make it a game or make it an event. I think that it quickly runs out in middle school, and especially post-COVID, we have not seen kids come back to a testing situation with the kind of test structure mindset that we would need for kids to do well on that examination.
Yeah, one of the interesting comments that this is the one and only question we got to sort of touch on last time. And one of the interesting comments that I had heard even before we met last week was one of the teachers saying, I watched a student just get through the test as quickly as they could and then lay down on their desk and fall asleep. And so that was discouraging. I want to see them do their best and be, you know, a productive member of our community.
So the follow-up to that is, do these scores collaborate with what we were seeing during in-class assessments such as FastBridge? But I think you kind of answered that a bit. If anyone wants to expand.
I'll add a little bit more to that.
Yes.
I think last week it was also mentioned that grade level teachers do meet and pour over these FastBridge results and the MDE results on essentially a weekly basis at multiple grade levels. They're making adjustments to help students with that curriculum, and that's great because they're adding in the scaffolds for the kids who need it. Furthermore, if you look at our ACT tests, I believe that the ACT tests from Pine Island were actually higher last year than the previous year. So that would disagree with the MDE tests in terms of the ACTs are actually improving, so the kids need that information. I also just pulled up the report card on MDE's website, and while the middle school tests did universally have kind of done one of these numbers, where COVID hit, they come down, and now in the last year, they're starting to round again. In the high school, the math test from last spring is already actually rebounding. Another piece of information that I think would be interesting is that internally, the elementary has even just introduced an entire new reading curriculum to help improve reading scores, but we won't be seeing the results of that for years to come. So I think, as Kate was saying, you have to be really careful when you look at these test results, because it's just one tiny snapshot. Each grade, you're not getting to see how that grade is doing over here. You just get to see how that grade compares to another grade. When you talk about validity, the validity of these tests is strictly limited to actually the state standards and those test questions. So as soon as we leave those 3 classes to the rest of a kid's education, the validity of those tests falls apart. I think you said last week that you're an avid reader, and you're an intelligent person, but if you got a certain kind of reading, you might not read it as well as the reading that you like to do. So you do have to be really careful with how you look at scores. And I think overall, the district is already acting in the areas where it feels like it needs to act. We're already seeing rebounds as kids are coming back from COVID. I would agree that I've seen, and I think a lot of teachers would agree that they've seen a general level of apathy. Students are they're tired, they're overly stressed, and they don't care about tests right now. And that energy is starting to come back. Last year, as we were fully in person, that was coming back, and even this year, there's increasing momentum. I think I would say that even today, the first week of homecoming, I saw a lot more spirit than I did last year.
Thank you. Do we want to, I guess there's one more follow-up. What are your thoughts on how to improve these results and increase student proficiency?
Which you kind of
But you kind of
spoke to that.
that.
New reading program, you said.
This year's a new year math curriculum.
That's what I thought.
So we're instituting a new elementary reading curriculum, there's a new math curriculum. Teachers are already looking down the line as well. I mean, for example, math teachers at the more advanced level, they've already looked at classes and seen where these students have these gaps in their learning, and they're already making up that work. So teachers are also adjusting their curriculums to try and pack in more, to provide more help, and to really dig in with kids to catch them up to where they should be.
Great.
If I could just real quick, another thing I would just add to that, and I didn't have a chance to watch the whole meet and greet last week. I didn't realize it was being live streamed until kind of the last 40 minutes, and I jumped in.
And you can still watch it, I think it's on.
Oh, if I go back.
Yeah, you can go back and look at it.
One thing I just caught that was said that I think is super important to this piece of the question is the idea we teach reading and reading, history and history, math and math, science and science. If we want reading scores to improve, we need to teach reading in everything.
Yes.
I, as the English teacher, cannot be the only one in high school responsible for teaching kids how to do technical writing and reading. And I can't be the only one in the high school who's teaching kids how to decipher a word problem when they get to math. Like, reading has to be a universally taught subject across the curriculum.
When it gets to what points that whole thing is, I hate talking.
I know.
The biggest thing to that is the classes need to be about the curriculum, and not, I've got friends that have kids in school here. I've heard some of the political things that are going on in the classes, and that's kind of stuff that needs to stop. It needs to go away. Talking to an old teacher of mine, he's been a teacher for over 40 years now, and I got to talk to him a couple weeks ago, and one thing we brought up, because I told him I was running for school board here, he goes, "You kidding, right?" And I was kind of a goofball in high school. But I'm hearing from too many of the kids that they're getting too much political stuff in the classrooms. You know, math is supposed to be about math, not politics. My teacher, my former teacher even said that, because I told him, I said, when we were in high school, none of us knew our teachers' political views, none of us knew anything about, that was all their private life. And so our thing about that is making the class about the class and trying to keep all distractions and such out of class. You got a question, Carissa?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to expand on that too, because that is one of my big concerns with our school. I feel like they do put their hand where it doesn't belong, trying to teach our kids certain things, and that may or may not conflict with your home life. So I don't know, I guess that's like a big concern. My son is in first grade, and now I have to like second guess if I'm gonna keep him in public school throughout middle school because of the things that they're teaching. I'm not quite sure why we're teaching like that there are 3 genders in 5th grade. I feel like that's a good conversation for at home, and I 100% believe that everyone should have a right to teach their kids what they want. And I don't think it's the place of the school, or I don't even want to say the teachers, because some of them don't even have that choice. But I don't think it's the place of the school to teach my child like their morals and their values. That's what they're going to get from home. So those are some things that, like, as a parent, as a person in the community, I was super excited about Pine Island moving here because of the small town feel, that we're not going to turn our school district political. So I don't know, I guess that's my encouragement for you guys, is that if you do make it on the school board, I think that would be something that's great to see. And not to like put others down or anything for anything that they believe or, you know, what their home life is, but just for me and my family, I'd like for that stuff to be taught at home. And so.
And, I forgot what I was going to say, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that is one of the things we had kind of mentioned, is that, you know, when you're in math, obviously you're going to learn math. But we do know that when you're teaching math, there are terms that you have to explain. We're not ignorant of that fact. So yes, reading has to be taught everywhere. But where that was coming from was I was saying that if you teach a child to read, they can learn anything. And I have experienced that. There are things that I started to be interested in middle school and high school, and, you know, would go to the library and pick up every book. And as I'm going through it and learning, you're picking up on different words, and you're going to the dictionary and figuring out what in the world does that even mean. So my whole point of stating that is just to say that if you can teach a child to read, to love to read, and that's the difference, not just how to read, but to love to read, they can learn anything they want. So that's where that was coming from. Yeah.
Just one comment about that and the stuff you said. So the teachers can teach how to read, and the skills, they can teach the skills that kids need to learn to read. That has to be reinforced at home, or it's not going to stick.
Yeah.
So the parents need to read. The kids need to see the parents reading. The kids,
Yes.
parents need to read with the kids, and if that doesn't happen, their reading scores are not going to be as high as you want them to be. The teachers can only do so much.
It's so true. And one of the things that I learned, and, you know, if you've not done this or offered this idea to your parents, go ahead and do so. But when my oldest daughter, started to read a series that I had never read before, again, she was probably I think she was in 2nd grade. I said, "What's it about?" She told me, and I was like, "Oh, can I read it?" And all of a sudden, I was reading every book she was reading. We were having conversations together. Eventually, I couldn't keep up. And then I had another daughter who starts bringing me books. "Mom, I want you to read this book." And now I've got 4 books on my nightstand that I'm trying to keep up with because I have 4 children. And they all have different interests. And I'm finally reverting to YouTube audiobooks to keep up with them so that I can keep up with what they're interested in while getting my chores done and not getting behind on everything else. So again, the learning to love to read is something that I'm passionate about. And I'd love to kind of brainstorm with teachers, talk to parents, you know, advocate for that. Because it's just a gift that, gosh, it's one of the best gifts I've ever had. So.
Did you want to go into question 4?
Yes, let's go. And then, so this one is one that I'm very curious about. Are there any educators, again, I'm sorry we're picking on you, but we really want information from you because you're there every day. And you're seeing things that we're not. What we get is feedback either from students, which we don't know, you know, where they're coming from and things like that. But are there any educators willing to speak to disruptions in the classroom? What are some of the types of disruptions, and what is that? I can't read this one.
What disruptions
And
are
which
most
ones are
common?
most common?
What is the frequency of these disruptions?
Yeah, like how often do you see disruptions? What disruptions are most common, and what types do you see?
You're not going to put 25 kids in a classroom without being disrupted at least
Right.
once.
Yeah.
I mean, we would all be lying if we said, no, classrooms are perfectly quiet and everybody is, you know, in their seat doing what they're supposed to do all the time. You wouldn't see test scores going down either. If we could get them that way, it's, you know, a testing scenario, right? That's what we're. I think you could probably ask this question to 10 different teachers and get 10 different answers. I think it depends on the day. I think it depends on the group of kids you have. I think it depends on what else is going on. You know, this week, the biggest disruptions in the classroom are probably kids being overly excited about homecoming and talking about the competition and talking about who's going coronation tonight. But that's going to be a lightning in a bottle. You know, next week it's going to be something else. I would say, again, in a post-COVID classroom, a lot of the disruptions, I think, probably stem from things that kids were doing at home that were not, or they perceived were not disruptive to their learning when they were learning at home.
Sure.
Right? The same way that things were not disruptive to my teaching in a different way when I was home. You know, when I am at school, I have 4 minutes in between my block classes to use the bathroom. That was not the case when I was at home, right? There are just some things environmentally that are different about being in a different environment, like I'm going to learn from home now or I'm going to teach from home now, that shift. And so I think things like cell phone usage that were always you know, that was always problematic pre-COVID, as long as kids had electronic devices in their hands. When you're at home and you don't have to be face-to-face in a Zoom meeting, and I don't have my screen turned on and Mrs. Locke is teaching to me on Zoom, I can be on my phone and no one's going to reprimand me. And if I do that for a year and a half and then I go back to a classroom, I have created a new habit that now is very difficult for me to break. It's also really interesting because, you know, when my students are on their phones, I would say half the time I go and ask a kid what they're doing, they're texting their parents. So I think the flip side of well, we just can't give kids cell phones in the classroom because they're 16 years old and they don't have a prefrontal cortex to know how to use it responsibly is parents have become so used to having immediate access to their kids. But I mean, when I was in high school, if my parents wanted to get in touch with me during the school day, they had to call the front office and hope that the front office could snag me to give me a message. And if I didn't have a ride home from, you know, track practice, I might have to walk home like tough bananas. And now I have parents that I talk to and I say, you know, Joey is really texting a lot in class. He says he's always texting you about football practice. And their response sometimes is, well, yeah, we just, you know, we both work and we can't quite, you know, get it figured out before he leaves the house. And I'm super sensitive to those at-home situations, but also it's the first time, you know, education has really faced the urgency of home, and getting in touch with the parent supersedes the urgency of maybe what's happening in the classroom. And what, you know, I had the conversation with a parent last year where a parent essentially told me, what you're doing in your classroom is not as important as what I have to tell my child in that moment. That's a crazy thing to hear as a teacher when you think about, you know, the value that you're putting on education, the value that you're putting on partnering with home, the value that you're putting on, you know, what's being taught and what you want the student to perceive as the value of that education. Now, is that every situation? Absolutely not. Do I have kids that are super responsible with their phones and put them away every day, or I have a cell phone parking lot in my room? And yeah, I have a class that I would say 98% of the phones are in the cell phone parking lot every day, and it's not an issue. Do I have a class where it's less than half? Yeah. And that's right, I think if you ask 10 teachers on 10 different days that question 10 times, you're gonna get a response every single time you ask it.
Okay.
I want to say, you know, when you first started you said that you were scared to come. I'm very glad you did. This is the kind of back and forth that we wanted at the original meeting, that we were looking for and hoping for, to talk with the teachers and talk with the community. And I wish you would have been at the first meeting, because this is what we want. This is the kind of discussions and back and forth we want, so we can learn to help everybody. I'm really glad you're here tonight. I just wanted to say that.
You're next.
I'm next.
Number 5.
Rochester is currently addressing many concerns regarding school safety. Are there any issues with school safety that we've been seeing on Pine Island? Is there anything that needs improvement? I'm ex-military, I've worked with law enforcement, you know, and I believe in keeping not only the kids safe, but keeping the faculty safe. I want to keep everybody safe. So the school safety is a big issue for me. I want to get as much feedback from the people who work in the schools and go to the schools on if there's things that the school board can do to make the schools more safe for the students and the faculty and everybody. So is there any concerns that you have about the school safety right now that could use improvements, or is everything going okay at the moment, or?
And same question for parents as well.
I'd like to say, like, last week, when they had the soft lockdown, that made me feel really good as a parent, actually. Like, it was annoying that I had to, like, call the office and be like, hey, can you send my son outside? Like, the doors are all locked down. But I want to say that, like, I've never felt uncomfortable sending my son over. I feel like, I mean, I guess I don't know the day-to-day because I'm not in there, but I've never worried about my son's safety.
Okay.
That makes me feel really good as a teacher. I'm glad that you're confident sending your kids to the back. Yeah, go ahead.
So to kind of make a little more sense, I'll give you a bit of my background. I've worked with law enforcement agencies all over the world. I've been involved with martial arts over 20 years. I was an infantryman in the Marines, I was an infantryman in the Army, and I've taught martial arts in Rochester. And I'm not trying to downplay the valuable service that our law enforcement officers give us. But I have to be honest, a lot of those men and women, they mean to do very well, but they are severely undertrained, especially when it comes to force-on-force type scenarios. So a lot of these officers that are protecting our schools, they've never been in a gunfight. They don't know what to look for, they don't know where to shoot, they don't know. There's a lot of things that go into winning a gunfight and to being a good gunfighter that they're just not equipped with. And so when you put 1 or 2, even 3, 4, 5 school resource officers at a school, you're basically, those kids are sitting ducks. It's not hard to take those officers off, or take those officers out. If you look at one of the big first school shootings, Columbine, multiple shooters, okay? The bad guys are getting smart. They're starting to hit targets with more than one person. And so it would really benefit every school system to hire veterans to protect the schools. We have the training, we have the trigger time, we have the discernment. We're not all out there craving violence, we're not loose cannons with PTSD. I myself, I've had to actually save children overseas before. I know how to deal with the adrenaline. I know how to win the gunfights. I know how to limit the damage. There's things like collateral damage you gotta worry about, where a lot of law enforcement officers don't know those things. The other thing is when you're dealing with children and the potential of a school shooter or a gunfight, you have to fight in such a way where it doesn't damage the kids or the school employees' mental health down the road. You have to be able to limit the gore, which means you have to be able to win that fight quick. A police officer is not trained for that. And so I think our teachers and our students and the faculty members at the school, and even the officers that are putting their life on the line, they deserve They deserve more. And part of that is give those officers that are there better training, better gear, and better funding. Give the teachers more protective measures, and then hire veterans. You know, some of us, even if you just hired them part-time, say, hey, come in once a week for 4 hours and have a rotation. Now it's a part-time job, you know, you're not having to give out as many benefits. You could hire disabled veterans who already have all the benefits that they need, and they would be awake and alert and fresh to do their job, and they would do an amazing job. And so that's, you know, from my standpoint, that's the best thing we can do, and that's probably something that needs to happen because it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time before something happens. Better to get on it now.
I'll start by thanking you for your service, and I agree with you. I mean, I'm a disabled vet. My body's in pieces. And that's one thing I've been wanting to see for years is there's the vet shelter that would be amazing resources for the schools to help protect kids, to help protect the staff.
Yeah.
I had a rocket launcher, I had a rifle on me, I had 3 knives on me. I mean, I was there to do war, and I saved a bunch of little kids with my unit, and they were crowding around us, hugging on us. I mean, they're not intimidated by that stuff if they know you're there to protect them. Matter of fact, a lot of those kids had this huge look of relief on their faces. You know, like it would be nice for our kids to know that all of those skills and tools, you know, are being used for their defense. Now, we don't need rocket launchers, obviously. And even the teachers, it'd be nice for the teachers to know, hey, if somebody wants to hurt me today, it's not going to happen. I have these brave men and women that are going to stop it, you know, before it gets too far.
Again, thank you for your service, but also thank you for, that is something I would have never thought about, you know. You mentioned minimizing gore, you know, means winning quickly, and that's something I would have never even thought to consider. So that answers B of that one.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
I think Pine Island in general does a really, really good job about keeping kids safe. I am so appreciative of having, I know it's like a big inconvenience, but like having to go into the school, give them my ID so that we know who's going into the school. That gives me a sense of security that the school isn't just letting anybody walk in there. And also just being proactive, especially last week with all the chaos. My work is about 3-4 blocks from Lourdes, so I felt more unsafe at my house, at my work, than I felt for my child. My child was way more safe than me, and just because of Pine Island being proactive, and not just like in a school shooter situation, but so a backstory, our neighbor's house burned down last year, total loss. We woke up at 1 a.m. to their whole entire house burning. But our teachers that are teaching not just school safety, but safety in general. My kindergartner already knew, and thank goodness it was like 2 weeks before the fire safety, or 2 weeks after they had just done fire safety, but our son came home and, what's our fire plan? What happens if our house burns down? And then he sees our neighbor's house burn down. So, which put it back in our mind. But then it's just like he knows what happens if there's a tornado drill. Like, it's just those simple things that as a parent you really don't think, because you know them. But that I'm so thankful that our school doesn't just take safety as in like, oh, school shooter situation, but we take safety. It's a high priority in any kind of situation. So, yeah.
Resource officer, especially veterans, you know, so many of us have dealt with, you know, conflict and resolving conflict. I think having officers in the school, I have been hearing a lot of stuff about bullying in the schools. And they're good at stopping bullying, they're good at explaining, you know, this isn't right. I don't like seeing anybody get bullied, and I'd step in no matter what. That's where I was going with that. Sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, I agree. I mean, even as much as like bus safety, like, especially for our little people, you know, something can happen too fast, but if they're aware and they know what, you know, the protocols are, it's much less likely to happen. So yeah, that proactive approach I really appreciate.
Number 6. Matt, 6. Okay, where do you go to find information regarding Pine Island schools? And what type of information about the schools have you sought out? So, is there anyone here that would like to speak upon that?
Especially community members.
Community members, maybe?
Or parents, yeah.
Or parents?
What about you three? What do you feel about it? Here, come here, hear you talk, let's go.
I honestly think it's really hard to find information on Pine Island School, and that's just me. But I think one part where there's a lot of struggle is the communication, and I say that from a different perspective, because like in the middle of the school year last year, my email changed. And when I was signing my child up, well, I had no idea even when school meet the teacher was. I didn't know my son's teacher until a week before school. I had no communication. And I understand people were out on break for summer, but there was no communication. I had no idea if I had to like enroll him again. He was in first grade, so I wasn't sure if it was an auto enroll. There was no, I emailed someone, they didn't email me back for 3.5 weeks. So I guess like, that's probably something that's a little bit more important, especially any parent that's trying to get any kind of information, and for like the next school year. But I think information, communication from like the school to myself or from teachers to myself is immaculate.
That's another big issue that we want the school to be more transparent, have a website where you can find the information easier. We've all looked at the website. It needs a lot of improvement, and there are some good things about it, but it needs work. And, you know, has the curriculum even been posted yet for the year?
It's supposed to be October 8th, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I just really use the website on my phone without it cutting half of the screen off. And I know I spoke to someone in the office, I think a few weeks ago, and I think they mentioned that they were working towards that, but.
In this age when everybody's got, you know, those tablets and phones, it'd be a lot easier to find the information they need with their phone that is in the pocket.
I do feel like with my experience with the teachers, I think there is a lot of good communication there, like amongst, at least from my perspective, the teachers to the parents, so that I know, okay, if my child needs help in this or you know, what's coming up. I think that works really well. And if you're a parent that seeks out that information, you know, I always get that response from teachers almost immediately. And you know, I always say this wrong, it's Schoolology, is that right?
Schoology.
Schoology. See, I always say it wrong.
Yeah.
But having that access and seeing in real time where my student sits, I think that really helps. But again, it's parents taking that role, right? And you can't make every parent do that. And unfortunately, that's, I mean, even some of you that are probably educators maybe didn't have a parent that helped you. So that's unfortunate, but that's a reality. But I think that, you know, that access and that ability to, you know, reach out to the educators is just crucial, and it's great. I mean, Pine Island excels at that, and I'd like to continue to see that, you know, process down the road. Or if there's new tools, that's the other thing too. I mean, maybe it'll be a tool that I can actually pronounce the word right in the future, but I'm just saying that, you know, whatever tool it may be, I think that's important. And with technology, we obviously have that ability, and we will have to see where that technology takes us.
Yeah. Schoology has been great. I think the hardest thing for me as a parent is having 4 children in 4 different grades, each of them with multiple teachers, each of them with multiple different areas that they're involved in. And for me, it's actually information overload, because sometimes there's multiple different routes of getting information, even from the same teacher. Either there's the kids come home with paper. I hate paper. And the kids come, and then there's an email that goes out, and then there's, whether it's on Schoology or something else. And so I'm just curious, like, if there's ever gonna be somewhere, probably not, but where everything is like streamlined, and I don't know. There just seems to be a lot to take in every single day. The number of emails I get, I should look at my phone and just count how many I got, and then the amount of papers that come home with information, and it's all good information, but it's so overwhelming as a parent that I do sometimes wish that there was just a little bit of an easier way where we could just go to one place and see everything and not feel like I'm maybe missing something. And that's my biggest concern, is that there have been times that I either have missed it or we barely figured it out 5 minutes before school and we're scrambling and it just starts out the day so stressful. So yeah, if we can avoid some of those little pitfalls of communication, but again, I don't have a magic pill answer, but I'd hope to want to work towards that. But yeah, if you guys have any other...
I'll just comment on that. We're senior citizens here, but we have 4 children. I can relate to you. You live through it. You will survive. And so will your children survive. We have 4 children playing sports throughout the year. Some excel and some would rather socialize. And you do, you sort of beat your brain about it. But welcome to parenthood. Welcome to the average part of living. It's not extraordinary. I mean, it's part of what it is. I mean, as parents, if you do the best you can, and hopefully the kids do the best you can, and the teachers, you're not unique up there saying you have 4 children and you're beating your brain out. We did it, and now some of our kids are going through that, and I see what they're going through, and you'll survive, and so will your kids, but it is. I know it's nothing like on a Monday morning saying, oh, I've got to have this to school, or Friday night, your football uniform's not washed. You go, oh my goodness. But you will get through it. We got through it, but I know it is a worry every Monday morning or Friday afternoon. Yet what's not done, but I think with the parents of the kids and the teachers all working forward, you'll make it, Mom.
What was your profession?
My profession?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
I'm just curious.
I was a paraprofessional special ed. I was a professor for 20 years, and I was an employment at Pine Island School in Rochester Public Schools.
So you do have some things to speak into some of these teacher aspects as well?
Most certainly.
She was also a nationally recognized 4-H.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. And what did you teach in 4-H?
Pardon me?
What did you teach in 4-H?
We're going to teach in 4-H everything. I did 9 county fairs this summer.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Did you?
I think we're ready for number 7.
Okay. What do you believe the role of the community could be in partnering with the school? And how do we make the most of community participation?
I think how to integrate community participation into things is very difficult. Whether it's schools or any other community thing going on. I was part of the team that helped look at the options for building the new elementary school early on when they were talking about building a high school, and then had a number of community forums, and those different forums resulted in changing the direction to an elementary school. And my sense was that it's pretty motivated community people that participate in that. And not everyone has that motivation. You know, I think of my own daughter who tells me, all I can do is just get through the day and fix dinner for my kids. I don't have time to go to that stuff. So I think it's a very important question, but I think it's also very tough, and I don't have any answers, but I want to acknowledge that it's important.
Yeah. And I noticed even after talking to a couple of gals last week, and I've heard this, I've seen it in churches and I've seen it in our communities, that so much of the volunteer or like even just like the community event planning and things like that tends to be done by an older generation than my generation. And what is going to happen to our community if we're not, kind of stepping into that or teaching our kids to participate in community? And but also, are they going to be motivated if they're daily not necessarily seeing that kind of interaction? So yeah, I guess this is something that I'd really love to delve into a little bit more, and just seeing and testing the waters, like how can we facilitate some opportunities for kids, which I love that they do. I think they do the food shelf once a year, and I think there's a couple other things. The cleaning thing where they go and rake.
Yep.
Serve and celebrate.
Yeah, serve and celebrate, yep. And so I love that piece of it, but I also want to see, I want them, for me particularly, for my children to visibly see like people partnering, Yeah, community members partnering. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a hard thing to really, it's something I think we need to talk about.
So, again, owning the theater, we've had the experience, and I love it, of holding middle-aged, what's the youngest we've gone to? I don't know if we've gone down to 5th grade, but doing dances with the PTO. And I mean, those, to be honest with you, those are more fun than a lot of the other things that I do in the theater. I love it. I mean, the kids come in, they're having a fun time. I'm up there just changing the music up, taking requests. I mean, there's I don't know, we get so many requests we can't even do all the songs, and then kids don't want to leave. But those are the kind of things where those kids will remember that. And I'm sure when I'm 80 years old, they'll be like, oh, we used to go and dance at the Old Pine Theater. But those are the things that, I mean, I'm not the only business person doing that. I mean, I know Tributes, Soda Fountain, they've given back to the community as well. But I'd like to, and even like Barry at the Trailhead, they've given back, and that's what, I'm not saying that the education's not important, but the social interaction that these children have with the community members, that's also going to develop them too. And we need to see more of that, and how do we do that? I mean, how do we, I don't know, could there be a field trip to PTM so they can see how that works? I don't know.
We have a field trip to our farm.
Yeah, and I'm a farmer too, so I mean, those type experiences, what really kind of develops these children even further. And we have so many talents in this community. We just need to encourage, that amongst everyone.
Don't some of the high school classes bring in community people on various topics related to their careers? You might remember that.
Yeah, it would depend on the class. I mean, and there are opportunities too, I think, where students, especially in high school, go out into the community. I know the art program takes kids into Rochester, and they go to Lim Lab and they look at career opportunities. They went to a medical digital illustration at Mayo, and partnering to look at some of those career opportunities. Pre-COVID, the high school was hosting the Careers Fair as part of one of their conference nights. And so there were community representatives from all different kind of service industries in the community. They tied it with some college visits who came in. So there were some trades people from the community that were here, so kind of trying to hit all the different opportunities. Representatives from various branches of the service, so that kids kind of saw that it wasn't just, four-year university is your only track, and kind of providing those other opportunities. COVID made it difficult to obviously post some things, and so as things have gotten more normal and on track, I think those would be things that the high school in particular would look to bring back as opportunity presented itself, because we even opened it to the community the first and second year that we did it, and ran it, I think, parallel to parent-teacher conferences, but then places that had job openings and opportunities had applications out that students could take, or, other professionals in the community looking for opportunities to take. And it's just kind of a networking event for the community all the way around.
Yes.
I think society as a whole has gotten to the point where nobody wants to participate because, hey, I can look at my phone and see what's going on in town instead of getting out and talking to people and meeting your neighbors and doing stuff. Growing up as a kid, I mean, shoot, we'd run all over and, we didn't have to worry about it. And now parents are like, well, you can't leave the house because, we need to know where you're at every waking moment of your life. So society as a whole has made this whole community participation not what it used to be. And until we can get away from, being closed into your own house and not wanting to be part of the community and your neighborhood, it's going to be tough to have involvement.
From another standpoint too, like my son has a new special ed teacher this year that's brand new to the district, and she mentioned to me that she was teaching a different grade level, and now she has to replace her whole school, library in her classroom. I would love to see that. I know a lot of teachers spend money on their own classrooms, their own materials, own books, and I would love to see not just parents helping to contribute, but the community as a whole contribute back. I don't know how that looks like, but even if there's a page oh, this teacher needs books for 5th grade for her room. I'm sure a bunch of us have a book or two that we would be please take them, instead of them having to spend their own money. Or school supplies, or I don't know. I know a lot of teachers just spend a lot of their own money, so it'd be nice if the community and not just parents are pouring back into the school in that way.
That's always been one of the biggest things is the teachers they're not respected and not paid enough as it is, but when they have to spend their own money on stuff for classes, that's why with this bill that Walt's passed, I'd love to see that money be put to use to helping teachers get more stuff they need and get more, the supplies they need without having to pay for all their own pocket, and that's
okay, you can.
yeah, that's something he's got a question back there. I'm kind of.
I have several friends who are teachers, and to kind of add to what's going on with this, it's not just teachers having to spend money on some of their own materials. I'm friends with teachers that in their classroom, they're having to really re-explain what's in the textbooks because the textbooks are outdated by 10 years. That's something a teacher shouldn't have to do. We have a lot of things that bring business to the town, you could have a battle of bands, something like that during Cheese Fest, and use that money to get brand new textbooks every year. I spoke how, we should give the police extra money, definitely that same philosophy should go to teachers as well. They should be paid very well, they should be, handsomely compensated for their time, and every year they should get brand new, up-to-date textbooks. I don't know why that doesn't happen. I'm not saying it's anyone in this room's fault, but to me it seems like if your community cares about the kids, you'd want the kids to learn actual facts instead of outdated information. So it's to the point where the books are not even telling the complete truth anymore. That's how bad it's gotten.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted, I don't know. So I really feel passionately about community involvement in school. Just because I feel like every kid needs to learn how to kind of give their own back to the community, and like that's our goal, you know. And so some things I graduated from high school in New Prague, and we had a very, very tight-knit community. And our community was very, very active in our school, and I think that would be something nice to implement. My husband actually is in recovery from opiates, and he's 6 years sober, and so like he's going to New Prague school to talk to the school about that kind of subject. And I'm not saying just that kind of subject, but like things like that, I think are really important. Like they were saying about like a career or job fair, like just things that you can't learn in a textbook. You can't learn people's real life experiences from a textbook. Just involving more people from the community, their experiences from the community, bringing that to the schools, and just kind of teaching kids that way.
Thank you. Can we get the next question? Oh, I'm sorry.
I got a question for the teachers. Do any of you guys have like a wish list on Amazon that the parents could?
I do, but I don't like sharing it. It feels kind of greedy.
I don't know, I have it, it's just mine.
Use all the help you can get though.
I know, and I think, and there are many teachers that do share it, but I can't do it. I don't know, that's
What
just
if there was
me.
like a way to anonymously like post to the community though, like, oh, we are in need of pencils, or we are in need of whatever, I don't know. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
that
I
would
didn't
be
know
better
if
if it
like
was more
the school as a
anonymous.
whole could, you know, have a wish list where, you know, let's say one of you guys put it on there, but it doesn't have your name, you know, associated with it, where, you know, the community could see.
I
And
think that's great.
Or businesses. Yes.
You could just give them an allowance. Listen, when I was in the military, we got an allowance for clothing.
Right,
For clothing, why can't these teachers have an allowance for supplies?
right.
You know, like, and then make it obviously like a lot of money, you know, like. But they should, I mean, treat them good, they're doing us a service, you know?
And we do.
We do have department budgets. As a high school English teacher, you know, I will say my wish list would look very dim, right? Like, if I was on an anonymous wish list, you're probably gonna be able to suss out a little bit, like, oh, this is a high school teacher. I'm not wish listing bulletin board borders, that's not happening in my room, but I know it's happening other places.
Bunch of soccer balls and.
Yeah, yeah. I will say this too, to the parents and everybody's out there. Actually, the nicest thing that a parent has ever done for me is to ask me directly during parent-teacher conferences, what can I bring to you? Where I didn't feel like I had to put it on a list, or I had to sneak it out to the community, or I had to, you know, try to figure out, like, they just came face to face. And it caught me so off guard at first, but I said, I don't really need anything. And she goes, every teacher needs something, what do you need? And she just put an Amazon cart together for me, and it all showed up in my classroom the next week. And it didn't have to be a big public thing. It didn't have to be me making a big show of it. It was just her. So I would just, those of you who have mentioned it, I think the teachers that you interact with or that your students have, that might be a good first step from the community partnering side of things. Maybe not to wait, you know, for the formal structure to come together, so there's a list you can go pick from. Like, that just, it really meant a lot to me as a teacher to just be asked directly.
Yeah.
Thank you. On to number 8 is Matt. Matt disappeared. Oh, Matt's it. I couldn't see him. We only have 2 more. They're quick ones. Hopefully they're quick. Number 8, the school board just approved the maximum tax levy. I think we kind of heard this from the teachers. But what is your view on how your tax dollars are being spent in relation to Pine Island schools? But I also think something that relates to that, if teachers want to move into this community to be able to live here, will they be able to afford it? I know when I grew up in Southern California, my parents chose one of the top of the top public schools. And so I lived in La Cañada, which is next to Pasadena, the Rose Bowl, Jet Propulsion Labs right there. So, but it was a very, and if you look now, there's no way in heck I could ever afford to live there. I don't know that anyone could. because it's multi-million-dollar homes. But if you're a teacher, a lot of these teachers in LA were driving an hour. I mean, it was the best school district to probably work in, but you're driving an hour and a half to go teach this school system, maybe because the parents are elevating their kids, and there's that drive, so that pulls in teachers, because, would a teacher want to work in East LA? Probably not. They probably want to work in the school district. But unfortunately, there were some of the teachers that live in the town, but very few. And that's one thing, I guess, with this one, and I know I'm answering it, but I believe, yes, to a point, we want to use those taxes to better our schools, and we want that money, going into the schools to better the schools. But on the other end, we don't want it to make it so restrictive that teachers can't live in this community, or other people can't live in this community because taxes are just too high.
When you say the school board just approved the maximum tax levy, what do you understand that to be? Because my understanding is that, I'll premise this with, I'm good with numbers, I'm good with accounting, I'm good with my own retirement, but I'm not really good at school levy things because I just don't understand that system. But my understanding is that whatever extra portion of the levy that the school district can institute, the Pine Island Schools actually doesn't institute any additional levy.
I think there's a max, like they don't have to say that they want to raise it to the max levy, right? So the next cycle, it's already there, because my understanding is the school board decides that. So the last meeting, that was unanimously approved to go to that higher, or the highest, I guess. You can't go any higher than that.
Don't look at me.
I guess I don't know. I guess my understanding is that the school district actually, when I moved here, the elementary just opened, and I remember I've heard something about the school district had promised to not institute additional tax burdens on the community, and that essentially that promise has been kept, and it might just be something to look into, because I think maybe there's some other thing that they approved, but my understanding was that whatever extra thing it is that the district can kind of determine the amount of, that's not the case, that they're at the maximum, and that it might actually be that there's no additional pull that they could be taking, but they're just choosing not to pull that additional pull.
I got a question for you three, and you're asking all the questions. But anyhow, I'd like to know how you three would have voted on this 1.3 million for that 75 acres.
That's the next question.
I want your opinion, but I don't want you people to get it.
I'm going to add a little color to number 8, because I did serve on the school board in 2011, 2015.
Yep.
And we're one of the very few schools in southern Minnesota that hasn't instituted a voter-approved tax levy since 2011. In fact, we're actually about 322nd out of 327 school districts as far as funding for students because of that. And we've been able to accomplish a lot of growth and programs in our schools through what we've experienced the last 10 years with our enrollment going up in our facilities and those types of things. But it's not because we're heavily taxed. And you should probably look into that a little bit more. In fact, we're in the 98th percentile for lowest revenue per student. And,
that's incredible, because some of the things, like I mentioned before, that you guys offer to high school students, it's remarkable in comparison to what I've seen being offered in other high schools. So that is a remarkable difference, if that is the case. Yep.
For me, I think, I don't even know, I don't even know my viewpoint on how the tax dollars are being used. Like, I I've looked on the website and they do include some financial information like on the meeting minutes, but then you have to pull up each meeting minute and then you're like scrolling through all these receipts and like, it's really confusing, like enough where I was like, forget this, like I can't even look into it anymore. So as a tax-paying citizen, it would be nice if that was maybe viewable in a different way.
Like more, like consolidated?
I mean, might be consolidated or user-friendly, or I don't know. Like, I'm looking at all these receipts for things, and like, that's great that those are available, but I don't know what I'm looking at, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I'm just saying, like, I don't even know how these tax dollars are being used. They talk about it in the meeting minutes, but it's confusing to me as a parent.
Yep, so Pine Island just purchased 70+ acres of land. As a community member, how do you see this being used to maximize that investment?
And he wants to know what our thoughts about it would be. Like, I'm still working on my.
So is everyone aware that it was the land that was slated to be the high school? So that was the land that was going to be sold to the schools for the high school, and then the land was donated for the elementary school, so kind of at the 11th hour, the schools decided to obviously take that donation for the elementary school. So that's where the elementary school resides. Then they went ahead and they renovated the high school, middle school. So now the schools just decided to go ahead and purchase that. I believe it's 72 acres, isn't it? And for 1.3 million, is that correct? So that land hasn't no set discussion of what that's going to be developed into, if it'll be developed, if it's more of an investment, but it's there. So I guess our question to you is, how do you see that being used in the future? Do you have any ideas? I don't know.
Wishes.
I'll let you ask the question to you three. How do you answer that question?
Because you're the ones who are going to be in.
Instead of always us asking.
Yeah, no,
I'm going to ask that question.
I can take a stab at it. So here's just my understanding. So when, I believe it was wasn't the California group that ended up donating that land out there, which makes sense from a developmental standpoint. If you're developing farmland, probably makes sense to put an elementary school there, because you're going to sell a heck of a lot of houses to elementary families that are coming in, that are entering in, because now parents can, it's easy. You have a house, it's a starter house, 3-bedroom house, 2-bath. You've got 2 or 3 kids. They can just walk right to school. School's there. I feel like, I guess my feeling was when that whole thing transposed, again, it's just my feeling, is I do think that you look at this high school and you can put a Band-Aid on it, but it's the point, and it's a very, very nice Band-Aid, because I love the facilities. I don't want to make it sound like that. Because I mean, it's great facilities now. You walk in there, and I mean, it's great. It looks great. They did a great job. But we still have athletic fields, and we have other things that are lacking, and they get flooded out, and it's just like, okay, you're dealing with that. Plus, we keep growing. Pine Island keeps growing. Pine Island keeps growing. And it seems like it's growing to the south more than it is to the north. So to me, I guess it would make sense that maybe this becomes a middle school, and you use that land to develop a really, really nice high school with athletic facilities, everything. I don't know what that looks like. If I were on the school board and it was moving that way and the strategic plan was showing that we were going to do something like that, I would definitely want to be a part of that and try to figure out what that means for the community. So I guess to answer that, that's how I would answer it.
And I'm the kind of person where I don't always necessarily come up with like oh, I think this is like the perfect plan. But I like to hear a lot of different ideas and kind of piece together in my mind, okay, what would make the most sense? But that's kind of where this question is coming from, is that there are other people who have probably better ideas than I do. And I would want to hear those. Do you have any ideas?
I would like to see, I'd definitely like to see a new school, state-of-the-art, that can offer as many programs as possible that it can help all the students get through and succeed. One school, when I lived in Tennessee, that I saw them build, I thought was kind of cool, is they actually, in my high school, we had auto shop class, and it was, one garage space where we really could work on anything. The school I saw built in Tennessee, they actually had an 8-bay garage for students to work on mechanics. They have an awesome science program, which I'm big into technology. I love technology, and it's like I was saying, you need to learn. Technology is getting bigger and more technical. I'm losing my mind tonight, but technology expands and everything. Even in cars today, the cars are so computerized and stuff that you need to start the kids off with a very good base that will help them get into all different forms of technology. Technology goes in everything. It's medical, it's automotive, aerospace. Technology is going into schools to help teachers teach. So I'd like to see that land be used to build a school that will make Pine Island one of the best schools in the area, or if not the best school in the area, for setting the standard.
Do you think that was the thought process behind the decision by the board with the purchase of this land?
I have no idea what the thought process was. Do you?
They shared at the last school board meeting.
I was just reading the article in the Post Bulletin, and they talked about looking towards the future and putting the community in a position with all the land is being developed and bought up in the area, and then for the decision to come at a later date by the community, similar to how it was in 2014 with the elementary school. And to me, that made a lot of sense.
Yep, and that doesn't surprise me at all, especially with how land is going right now.
And how Pine Island's growing.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And you also have to think about this, another thing, maybe we didn't even discuss any of that, but we have the Elk Run, right? The development. You have Prairie Island Group. Prairie Island Group's gonna come in, and I think it's great. I do. They're coming back to Wazawita. That's what it is. That's what it should be about. We should be celebrating that. But as they come in, I know they're working on their reservation status right now, and it is set for community, right? They've kind of been pushed out of the Prairie Island reservation where they're at. First, the dam and lock system comes in, floods them, then Xcel Energy comes in, and they start storing nuclear waste there. They were never supposed to do that. Plus, there's a railroad that goes right through there, and if it happens to be going and all of a sudden they need to escape, they can't. There's one way in, one way out of that reservation. So henceforth, they find this great piece of land, this parcel, but we know initially they probably will, if they start building here, they may not have schools right away. So those students are going to come into our school system, and what is that going to look like? And are we going to have enough facilities? So we're going to probably need bigger facilities just to handle that. So again, I don't know, maybe some of those discussions came up with the school board, but that's something we have to discuss and continue to talk about as a community, not just as schools, because that's happening, that's real.
Well, I'm not against the buy it, I just want to know your opinion on everything. You got to vote for you or you don't, right?
There you go.
You
got my opinion.
Someone yes or no. That's going to grow because all that land around Orinoco belongs to Pine Island School District.
Yep.
Only the city limits of the Rochester School District. Right, with the sewer coming out there, it's going to develop.
Yep.
Just like that. All right, I just went to park it for over 2 million. So it's over $2 million.
Howard Hines did.
Yeah. That's all going to be in house.
Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. we will stick around if you have any further questions of the candidates. And there are still a lot of donuts up there, so I expect you take those home and eat them, or bring them home to your kids, because I won't eat donuts.
They're not gluten-free.
And thank you, Matt. Matt's our technical director. He's up there forwarding the PowerPoint.
Really bad.
I really am glad you came out. I wish I could like that.